Welcome to Crime Story with Camila. Today we talk about the chilling story of a love twisted by obsession, a mother's betrayal. Stay tuned as we delve in. On the surface, the Johnsons seemed like an ordinary family living a picture-perfect life. But behind closed doors, a chilling story was unfolding, one of forbidden obsession, jealousy, and heartbreak. This is the story of how a mother's love turned into a dangerous fixation, leading to a devastating tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Prepare yourself for a tale of betrayal and loss that will leave you questioning just how far someone can go when love turns toxic. Pinewood was a place where everyone knew their neighbors, and the Johnson family was well loved in the community. Sarah, the 22-year-old daughter of Linda and Greg Johnson, had recently started dating Ethan, a kind and hardworking young man who quickly became a beloved figure in their lives. Sarah and Ethan were inseparable, their love radiating in every smile and shared moment. But there was someone else who had taken notice of Ethan, someone who should have been his greatest supporter, but instead became his greatest threat. Linda Johnson, Sarah's mother, was known for her strong personality and fierce devotion to her daughter. Yet, beneath her polished exterior lay an obsessive streak that would soon spiral out of control. What began as a mother's protective instincts quickly turned into something much darker. It wasn't long before the cracks in this picture-perfect family began to show, setting the stage for a love triangle no one could have predicted. What started as harmless curiosity soon turned into an unhealthy fixation. Linda began paying more attention to Ethan, not just as her daughter's boyfriend, but as someone who fascinated her in a way that went beyond what was appropriate. She began engineering ways to be alone with him, creating situations where their paths would cross. At first, Ethan didn't think much of it. After all, Linda was Sarah's mother, friendly, involved, and seemingly harmless. But as time passed, her behavior grew more deliberate and harder to ignore. Linda's interest in Ethan became a central focus of her thoughts. She found herself drawn to his charm and kindness, interpreting his polite interactions as something more. Her fixation deepened, blurring the lines between admiration and obsession. Sarah, unaware of her mother's growing infatuation, was too busy enjoying her relationship to notice the subtle signs. But Linda's actions began to show cracks in her carefully maintained facade. Linda started crossing boundaries she had no right to. Her jealousy of her own daughter became undeniable, and her fixation on Ethan began to consume her. It was no longer about protecting her daughter. For Linda, this was something far more personal, a dangerous obsession that would soon spiral out of control. Linda's obsession with Ethan grew harder to conceal. What once seemed like motherly involvement began to feel invasive. Sarah, now sensing her mother's unusual behavior, started voicing her concerns. Sarah, angrily, "Why are you always meddling? You're suffocating us." Linda defensively said, "I'm just looking out for you, Sarah. You don't see what I see." Linda brushed off Sarah's accusations, claiming she only wanted the best for her daughter. But her true intentions were becoming more apparent to those around her. Ethan, too, began to feel the weight of Linda's obsession. Late-night texts, unsolicited advice, and unexpected visits left him uneasy. He confided in Sarah, who was torn between defending her mother and protecting her relationship. Sarah confronting her mother in the kitchen, her voice trembling with frustration. "Sarah, you need to stop texting Ethan. This isn't normal, Mom." Linda said, "I'm just being friendly. Why are you making this a big deal?" As Sarah tried to set boundaries, Linda only became more manipulative. Her obsession with Ethan fueled jealousy toward her own daughter, a dangerous mix of emotions that further strained their relationship. The tension in the household was palpable. Sarah grew distant from her mother, while Ethan found himself walking on eggshells around her. Linda, however, saw this as an opportunity, a chance to drive a wedge between them. But the more Linda tried to control the situation, the more isolated she became. Her fixation blinded her to the damage she was causing, and her obsession was hurtling toward a breaking point. For weeks, the tension between Linda and the couple had been escalating. Sarah had insisted on setting firm boundaries, but Linda's obsession only grew. One night, Linda decided to take matters into her own hands. Fueled by jealousy and rejection, Linda made a decision that would forever change all their lives. That evening, she drove to Sarah and Ethan's apartment uninvited, her thoughts racing with irrational emotions. Sarah said, "Mom, what are you doing here?" Linda responded, pleading, "I need to talk to Ethan. Just for a minute. Please." Linda insisted she had something urgent to discuss with Ethan, ignoring Sarah's protests. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed to hear her out, hoping to defuse the situation. Linda said, "Ethan, I can't stop thinking about you. You're everything Sarah doesn't deserve. You everything I've always wanted." Ethan, in shocked, responded, "Linda, this isn't right. I love Sarah. This has to stop." Linda's confession shattered any semblance of normalcy. Ethan's rejection sent her over the edge, her humiliation turning into unbridled rage. Linda, yelling, "You don't even see how lucky you are. He deserves better than you." Sarah responded, "Mom, stop. You're not thinking straight." What followed was a chaotic struggle, a moment of madness that no one could have anticipated. In her rage, Linda lashed out, and the situation spiraled out of control. By the time the neighbors called the police, the damage was done. Sarah and Ethan were gone, victims of Linda's uncontrollable obsession. The woman who claimed to love them had destroyed everything. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found a chilling sight: 2 young lives cut short and a mother, lost in the wreckage of her own obsession. Linda was found next to Sarah and Ethan, her face drenched in tears, her hands stained with their blood. Linda was arrested without resistance, her mind seemingly clouded by grief and guilt. But as investigators pieced together the events of that night, it became clear this wasn't a crime of passion. It was the tragic result of an obsession that had grown too powerful to control. Linda, whispering, "I never meant for it to go this far. I loved him, and I loved her too." In Linda's eyes, she wasn't the villain. She was a victim of a love so twisted it blurred the lines between right and wrong. But to the world, and to those who knew Sarah and Ethan, the truth was undeniable. This was the tragic fallout of a mother's dangerous obsession. 2 young lives were lost that night, lives full of potential, full of love, torn apart by a mother's unrelenting desire. The community was left to mourn the senseless tragedy, and Sarah's family, once a picture of happiness, was now irreparably broken. Linda's trial was an emotional spectacle. Psychologists testified about her mental state, suggesting that her obsession had spiraled into a delusional belief that she and Ethan were meant to be together. But nothing could erase the reality of the violence she had unleashed. Linda was convicted of double homicide. The once beloved mother, whose love turned to madness, was sentenced to life in prison. Yet, no punishment could bring back the 2 lives she had destroyed. In the end, the only legacy left was a haunting reminder of how unchecked emotions can spiral into violence. A tragic love triangle that no one could have imagined, and a warning that obsession, no matter how innocent it seems, can lead to devastating consequences. The aftermath of the tragedy left more than just physical scars. Linda's life, as she knew it, was over. Behind bars, she faced the reality of what she had done, of how far her obsession had driven her. For Linda, the years ahead would be spent reflecting on a moment of madness that changed everything. Was it love that drove her to this? Or was it something far darker, an insatiable need to possess what she could never have? Greg, Sarah's father, shaking his head, voice choked with grief, "I lost my daughter, and Ethan lost his life too. No sentence will bring them back. But I hope this sends a message. That obsession, no matter the excuse, has devastating consequences. For Sarah and Ethan's families, the wounds would never heal. Their memories, once filled with joy, would now be colored by the tragedy that took them away far too soon. As for the community, their sense of safety and trust was shattered. What had once seemed like a normal family, neighbors, friends, had harbored a darkness no one saw coming. This tragedy would forever alter the lives of everyone involved, a reminder that the most dangerous kind of obsession often hides in plain sight. For Linda, the tragedy was far from over. In prison, she would live the rest of her life knowing the depth of her actions, a broken woman whose obsession had cost her everything. The story of Linda Johnson, Sarah, and Ethan is one of obsession, love, and heartbreak. It's a tragic reminder that when emotions go unchecked, the consequences can be catastrophic. What should have been a love story became a nightmare that no one could have predicted. Linda's obsession blinded her to the love she should have protected and nurtured, pushing her to take actions that would forever change the lives of those around her. Sarah and Ethan's love, so full of promise, was stolen in an instant, leaving behind nothing but grief and sorrow. Now, Linda lives a life marked by guilt, confined to a prison where the echoes of her actions follow her every day. For her, the reality of her obsession is a sentence far harsher than the one imposed by the law. While Linda's life was destroyed by her obsession, the lives of Sarah and Ethan will never be forgotten. Their story serves as a warning, reminding us of the danger of unchecked desires and the cost of losing sight of what truly matters.
Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos, please subscribe.